I said to Serena, I've got a confession to make. Don't tell anybody I've told you this. I haven't shared this with anyone else before. Hello, 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 and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, come and join the conversation in our Facebook group.
And enjoy the show.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everyone.
I just got back from a really fun few days in London. I got to go see Wicked the musical again. Very exciting. It was so funny though, because we were I went with my other bestie and their kid, and we were trying to explain. I don't think he'd been to a musical where he knew the music quite that well before. We're like, you can't sing, unfortunately. He was like, what do you mean I can't sing? And I'm like, and then the funny thing is that a little bit while later, I saw a video where somebody had taken their boyfriend to the cinema, to the movie theater to see Wicked the movie, but they didn't realize it was the first time they'd seen Wicked the movie, and they didn't realize it was a sing along. this guy is like, what in the ever loving? What is? Like, it was hilarious. So it was like the two things in such quick succession. It was, it was funny.
That's all you need is to see a kid like standing up on the chair having Alphaba's moment at the end.
Right? Oh, and he would have done. I could see him totally doing that, yeah. Just
what is
living his best Alphaba life.
the cry at the end of the
yes,
Defying Gravity song.
Yes. Oh, I mean, we would have all been down for that. I mean, at some point, like when part 2 comes out, obviously I want to go see both at the movie theaters, but I really want a back-to-back like sing-along session, and like I already know some of the people. I'm like, okay, you're coming and you're coming and you're coming, like, because it's gonna be a whole thing.
I feel like it's hard in general with musicals, like once you get to know them. Like I feel like I've seen Chicago so many times. I feel like I'm in Chicago when I'm doing it. Like I'm all jazz hands in my seat, and I'm like, oh, that jazz. Like, and I've learned to kind of like, if you go to the theater, you learn like theater etiquette, but there are sometimes it's hard, and it's like I don't even get mad at it as long like if I hear it, because I used to get like I didn't come to hear you sing, but like there's a certain enjoyment when somebody doesn't even realize that they're saying, they're just kind of like going along with it. Like,
at least the good thing is with Wicked is that obviously Defying Gravity is the like proper big bells. I mean, there's a few really good songs in it, but I get so emotional every single time I hear Defying Gravity. I don't think I could sing it at full pelt anyway. So I mean, at least that it saves me from myself, kind of thing.
But it was really gravity.
Yeah. Well, and it was so cute because we actually surprised my friend's son with the fact that we were going, and I got these cute little witchy earrings that are like little witchy hats. And I'm wearing a clue, and when he realized that, they were like, we're going to see Wicked. I'm like, that's exactly what my reaction would have been. Like it was, we were all living our best musical theatre kid lives last week. So and I hope that when you hear that, you listen and you don't judge. See what I did there? Nice little segue.
I'm not sure if that was a smooth segue, but it was a segue.
Hey, it was something. So today, I mean, if you don't know what, like, if you just heard we listen and we don't judge, and you don't have any clue what that means, let me explain to you the context of this week's episode. Because if you're not on social media, and especially the kind of video-based social media, so
if you're not on the TikToks like me,
yes, on the TikToks, or like the Insta Reels or the YouTube Shorts, like those, like these are the places that you will have seen this show up. And obviously, there are these things called trends, which every now and again, like somebody starts starts doing like this. Everyone starts doing the same kind of video. Like, what are you giggling at?
I had like a they say like the end of your life flashes before you. I just had like a flash of like 10,000 really bad trends just go through my head at once, and that's what you caught was that moment. I'm like,
it was like, oh yeah.
So glad I have said it once. I will say it a million times. So glad social media wasn't a thing when I was in my messy era.
Yeah. That part. Yes, that part. And so some of these trends are kind of relatively innocuous, like there are like the put a finger down thing, like someone's telling a story and they're like, put a finger down if da, 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 and then they tell this ridiculously unrelatable story and then put a finger down. So and then there's other ones, like there's a lot of dance trends where like a certain piece of music, like somebody will do a dance and then everybody will be like repeating that dance. There's
the chicken noodle soup dance of way back when. It's
what?
Chicken noodle soup with the soda on the side.
I have no idea what that means.
Don't look it up.
Was this a trend before trends were a thing?
I think it was the beginning of the trends.
Right.
Like that was one of the first. It was kind of like when Baby Shark. It was like in that like that kind of bubble of trends. So that's like where it started for me, and pretty much where I didn't ever chicken soup, especially not on video. Well, I mean, I just kind of did, but besides that, like
until now.
But like I said, if I would like back in the day, I would have totally been like. I would have been
like especially like imagine the dance trends, like you and I would have been eating that stuff up as like teenagers, like look at us, and they're like, oh god, don't look back at your old videos, like sort of thing. Anyway, so there's all these kind of trends, and like certain sounds will indicate trends. So like a sound will start to go viral, and other people will start recording the same thing with the same sound. It's all these different things. And there's one that has been doing the rounds for a little while now called We Listen and We Don't Judge. And this normally involves 2 or more people on camera at the same time. And what they do is they start off by saying, we listen and we don't judge. And then one person says something, and it's obviously something that they believe in some way they're going to be judged for. That's kind of the basis of this, is like, I'm sharing something that I think I'm going to be judged for. And then the whole thing is that we listen and we don't judge. So we're not allowed to judge. So then, when they finish their thing that they share, they both say we listen and we don't judge. And then the other person shares something. And then we listen and we don't judge, da, da, da. And I've had some feelings about this trend. And the feelings are kind of multi-layered. So I don't know how much we're going to get to in this specific episode. We may end up doing more from like in the future about this. But I think that, I mean, on the surface, this seems like it could be a good idea, but that's also because we get taught that judging is a bad thing in our society. And I'm going to sidestep that particular piece of the puzzle, because that is definitely something that requires its own episode, which is that, and like, just to put it like a very kind of superficially, a lot of the time we believe that judgment is a bad thing. Now, the context in which judging somebody is a bad thing is a lot of the time when there's some sort of superiority aspect involved, where it's like, I'm better than you, or I think better than you, or my way is better than your way kind of thing, versus discernment, which is really important to be able to figure out what is right for us and what is not right for us. It may not be that this way is the right way and that way is the wrong way. It's just, this is the right way for me and that way wouldn't be right for me. It's not that there's something wrong with it. It's just discernment over this way of doing things feels in alignment and this way of doing things doesn't feel in alignment. So like I said, I'm not going to go, I'm like clawing my way back up from the rabbit hole. But I think that part of the problem is that we've been taught in our society that to judge is a bad thing. And therefore, on the surface, this seems like a good idea. If we were to accept the premise, which I'm not saying we should, that judging people is a bad thing, because I think that certain behaviors like bigotry, for example, perfectly okay to judge them as not okay and to communicate as such. But if we were to accept the premise that judging is not a good idea, that's weird. I'm getting notifications when my thing tells me I shouldn't be getting notifications. Okay, cool.
Gonna be one of those episodes.
Yes, yeah. Getting myself back to it. So if we accept the premise that that judging people is not a good thing, then a trend which provides a space which seems like it's going to be a non-judgmental space seems on the surface to be a good thing. But there are a lot of issues with this trend, a lot of issues. And I'm going to start off with some of the kind of the ones that really apply to everything. Because I'm literally just, interestingly enough, we've just talked about this episode before we started recording. And I've just realized that I'm about to go rogue in terms of what I actually said prior to recording, as is often the case with me. But even the whole, like if we're talking about things that we are right not to be judged for, that there is no reasonable expectation of judgment because
I put
you're not
ketchup on my
hurting anybody.
eggs.
Exactly.
Some people think it's appalling. Like,
yes.
I have been judged for my ketchup usage on eggs. That is
right.
not something I should be judged for.
Exactly. Like, because it's not, you're not harming anybody by doing that. You're just, this is the way of doing things that I like to do.
And I know there's some chefs out there being like, you're harming the heart of the chef when you put ketchup on eggs, and
not an actual thing. Like, let's put this in a needs context. You're not negatively impacting somebody else's needs by putting ketchup on your eggs. If somebody else thinks you shouldn't be putting ketchup on your eggs, they're expecting you to meet their needs by you not doing that, which is bullshit. And like, if you put it in that context, everyone's like, yeah, that's ridiculous. That wouldn't be a thing. Now, the interesting thing is, so I like, before we started talking about this, I was like, well, actually, in that context, I think that we listen and we don't judge thing is okay, because yeah, if we're talking about stuff where we're not negatively impacting somebody else or compromising somebody else's needs in the terms of what we're saying, then absolutely, it's like, it's good to be in that place of like, yeah, we get to be seen and not judged in what we're doing. However, I'm going to actually change my thinking on this, because I actually don't believe that it is true that we listen and we don't judge. I think that what is happening is that people are saying we listen and we don't judge. But in actual fact, I think that people are still being judged. And the interesting thing is, I think people know they are still being judged in that context. So it's not even like you're like, oh, I'm being seen for myself and accepted for who I am. Because obviously, if I was being like, if I said to Serena, I've got a confession to make. Don't tell anybody I've told you this. I haven't shared this with anyone else before. I put ketchup on my eggs. Like, Serena is not going to be somebody who would judge me for that. She may go, cool, not for me. As it turns out, no, it is for her because we both do it. But even if it wasn't for her, she's not going to judge me for that, because she'd be like, you do you, boo. Like, whatever it is, like, if as long as it makes you happy, cool.
Whatever sprinkles your Sunday.
Whatever sprinkles your Sunday. Because of the relationship that we have, and because I know that Serena doesn't judge me and my choices in the same way as I don't judge Serena and her choices, as long as she's doing things in a self-first way, things that work for her in ways that don't negatively impact anybody else, I'm all for it. But just because somebody says, I'm not judging you, if you don't trust that they are actually not judging you. So if I said that to Serena, I know we're making a big joke about the kind of ketchup on eggs thing, but if it was something where I was worried about being judged, and I went to Serena and I was like, firstly, obviously, we want to be able to do this for ourselves. That's kind of a given. But obviously, we're talking specifically in this episode about communication with other people. So if I go to Serena and I say this and she goes, well, that's cool, as long as it makes you happy, like, you do you, that's awesome. I'm probably going to feel seen. I'm probably going to it's probably going to meet my acknowledgement need. It may even affect my value need in some way, shape or form, because I believe I was going to be negatively judged, and not being negatively judged makes me go, oh, okay, cool. That's awesome. It's probably going to make me feel more secure because I'm like, I feel like I can be my full self around this person. It's probably going to meet my love and connection need. There's a lot of needs that are going to be met in that context if it is genuine. And if I have a genuine belief in the fact that I'm not being judged for it. If, however, somebody, because of a TikTok trend, is looking at you going, and Serena's a really good example of this, because if Serena were judging me, it would be written all over her face, no matter what her words were saying. So if she was saying, I listen and I don't judge, but the eyebrow was up and the head's tilted. I'm like, oh, she is totally judging me right now. Not only do I get, not that would happen these days. We've both been very judgmental in our past. So this is not just, I'm not singling out Serena here. I absolutely would have been in this position with other people as well. But if that were to happen, not only does it not meet my acknowledgement need and my value need and all the other needs that would be met when I was feeling seen and accepted and loved and appreciated as I am without any judgment, it has the opposite effect of that. And I feel even less seen, even less understood, even less accepted, because a lot of the time we can tell when what somebody is saying is not genuine. Mm-hmm. We can feel the disconnect between what's being said and what is actually true. And it's worse to have someone say, I'm not judging you, and feel that they are, than to have never had that conversation in the first place.
It plants a seed that wasn't there. Like the second somebody says it and you can see they're like,
or nourishes the seed that was already there. It's like, oh, I think I'm going to be judged for this. And now it's like, oh, someone's just dumped a whole load of manure on it. Like, let's bloom that baby. And it's like, ugh, no.
And as somebody who has a very expressive face, like if you think you're hiding your judgment when it's not there, chances are you're not doing it as well as you think you are. And it's like, there have been times that somebody said something to me and it's like, I hear what you're saying, but it's almost like I can see through into your brain. And I'm like,
yeah,
false.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we've all been in these situations. So even when it's something relatively innocuous, i.e. it's not something we're not sharing something in this trend that has negatively impacted somebody else. It's just something that is something that's a preference, maybe something maybe is a preference that's a little outside of the ordinary. It doesn't have the effect. Like, I think that the idea behind this is that, okay, people get to feel accepted and that they're not being judged and everything. But in actual fact, unless you are in a place where it's a little bit like, and this is going to sound like a really odd thing to compare it to, but it's a little bit like if somebody proposes in front of a room full of people, there's all this social pressure to say yes. And if they're like, yeah, that sounds awesome, great, like, the person's going to be able to feel that's not a genuine reaction. And it's like, by putting the camera there and by like people knowing this is something that we are recording to put on social media, there is this kind of social pressure to, well, I have to say I listen and I don't judge, because that's the trend. It's like, listen, wasn't supposed to judge, really fucking judging you in this moment. Like that's not the trend. Like, the trend is we listen and we don't judge. And therefore there is a feeling of obligation that they have to say they listen and they don't judge, even if they do, because of the social pressure, both of the person in front of them who knows this is how this is supposed to work, and also everybody who's going to end up watching on social media. They look like you were about to say something.
You saw it. And that person who is on the other side of the being listened to and not being judged can be using this to their own advantage to how am I trying to put this? Basically, you can't judge me because this is what we're doing. Like, it almost gives them it's a little safety net to be like, oh, I can say anything. You can't judge me because that's what we're doing here. And it's like,
right. And that's kind of the secondary thing. But just before we get into that, like, I just really want people to recognize that even if you're not doing it as a way of like, oh, well, you can't judge me, so I'm going to say all the stuff that you might judge me for. So that I think a lot of people, they're doing it because it's like, this is supposed to bring our relationship closer together. This is like, it's supposed to be where I get to feel seen and I get to feel accepted. But that doesn't happen in this context, because even if that were true, like, I know Serena doesn't judge me and my actions. But if I put a camera in front of the two of us and said, we're going to do a trend now, which is we listen and we don't judge, even if she said the same thing, I'm like, well, is that really genuine or is it just the trend? Like, even with the two of us, I mean, and the truth of the matter is, if you know Serena, I would never put a camera in front of her going, we're going to do a social media trend now. Ta-da! Because she would be judging me in the moment that I said that. Like, so you want me to do what and not judge? No, sorry.
But even in social media.
Even in that context, like it changes things because there's this outward gaze and there's this social pressure that goes with, I mean, going back to like what we were talking about in terms of like the social norms in the previous episode, like there's this expectation we're supposed to behave a certain way in certain situations. And especially when you're doing a social media trend, there is even more expectation that this is how this is going to go. Don't mess this up, because like this is like we're on the same page. We listen and we don't judge. In fact, one of the funniest things I've actually seen is like where people do, there are trends where like you hand the phone to somebody else, like multiple people are recording. And there was one I saw a while ago where the person had told the 3 people she was passing the phone to that they were all doing different trends. So one was I'm passing the phone to, which is like I'm passing the phone to the person who is most likely to fall over in public or something. Or so one of them thought they were doing that. One of them was doing, I think it was doing put a finger down. And the other one thought they were just making weird noises. And so it was like cycling through these people. They all think they're doing different trends. But because of that, they're all doing the trends they know they're supposed to do because they know how it works. And they don't step outside of that until you have someone who goes, we could have some fun with this. Let's like tell everyone we're doing a different trend and just see what chaos ensues.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it. I had a thought. Come back to me, thought. Oh, you had made a comment that people do this because they feel like it's going to bring them closer together. Like, a no judgment zone. I actually say no to that. I say
good.
No.
Awesome.
We're going to go back to the eggs. I like using the eggs because it's such an obscure example that like, I mean, it just seems to lend itself to this. So my best friend Melissa does not put ketchup on her eggs. She's not a huge ketchup fan in general, and she's always commented on my use of ketchup in certain things, which is fine. Now, if we were in this situation doing this whole I'm not judging you, I don't believe she judges my ketchup usage. I don't think she gives a shit. However, if I was telling her this for the first time, like this was a big secret that I was going to share with her because I thought she judged me on it, and she just says, what was the actual phrasing?
We listen and we don't judge.
We listen and we don't judge. There's a dialogue that gets shut down. Well, why don't you like ketchup on eggs? Like, I'm glad to know that you think this isn't for me, so I don't put ketchup on your egg. Like, I feel like you're actually losing some of the connection, and you're losing some of that genuine, like, coming together when you approach it with just like, it's a call and response. Like, that's all that it, like.
Yeah. And I firstly, fucking love that you just said no to something I said. Like this makes me so happy because like a lot of the times, like I will tweak things that Serena has said, and I love that it's working both ways. Like that makes me really happy.
And I didn't mean that to the no to what you said, but just to the in general. Like,
but still, I like, and it exactly just makes me happy. I can imagine people listening to this going, what you like? I'm like, because I love this work being challenged. I love being challenged and seeing, because it always evolves the thinking even further. And I think that maybe there might be a belief that it could do that, but I think you're right that I don't think that is actually what happens in practice when it happens, because you're right, it does shut down. Totally agree. It shuts down dialogue and there's no seeking to understand. And that's the thing that really brings you closer together. There's no curiosity in that. It's like, I'm curious. Like, what is it about ketchup that you really like? Like, there are certain things like, I love fries. I love potato. I don't think I've ever met a potato I didn't like. It's one of my go-tos. And yet I find that with fries that they can be a bit dry. I use ketchup, or I have something to dip my fries in. Not because I love ketchup and want to have ketchup. It's because it makes my fries more enjoyable to eat. And it's like, if there's no curiosity about that, there could be a million reasons why somebody puts ketchup on fries or eggs or something. But unless you understand why, there's so much information you're missing.
My grandmother used to put blueberries in her omelets. It still to this day, I find it bizarre, but there was a pop of sweetness that she liked in it. Like, she's like, if I'm going to eat fruit and I'm going to eat eggs, Like, this makes it easier. Weird combo, worked for her, not my thing. And like, it made me understand, like, okay, I can, like, if that's the flavor profile you're looking for, like sweet, eggy umami, like, okay, go for it.
Well, it's a little bit like I love putting pomegranate seeds in my avocado toast, but that's because I like a little pop of sweet and a little bit of crunch.
And it's so good.
It's so good. So good. Anyway, the other thing that was just occurring to me as we're talking about it is that even the language, if you think about it, it's not I'm listening and I don't judge. It's we listen and we don't judge. Like it's like one step removed. It's like you're not going, well, of course I don't judge you for that. We listen, we don't just, I've got in my head, Serena may not understand the reference because I'm the geek between the two of us, but it's a little bit like the Borg from Star Trek. Like the Borg is like, there's all these different people, but they're actually one, they're all connected. So they think with one mind. And so they're not having individual conversations. They're all just regurgitating the same stuff. And I think even the language of it, I'm not suggesting that trends are serious, that we should break them down to this level of detail, like generally speaking. But even just like especially when you're talking about judging, it's almost like the one of us, like, you know, like it's like we listen and we don't judge, like we're all just doing the same thing.
That's kind of like trying really hard to like jump over this gaping chasm of a hole right now, so I am choosing what I'm saying very carefully. Bear with me for like just a moment. All right, we'll go here with it. I don't know if I'm picking the right place, but we'll see.
Okay.
It sounds kind of like brainwashed. Like, I feel like that's something that you'd
like groupthink.
Yeah. Like that's right when you said it, I'm like my mind went a couple of different places. I'm like, it's like we as in the whole, like if it's just me and you and you say we to me, I'm gonna be like,
what? We who is the other people in the room with us right now?
Okay, so I'm being judged by multiple people because I don't believe that you're not judging me. I mean, and that actually brings up a good point. Like you just made it, like if you aren't being genuine and that person can either sense judgment or even just thinks there's judgment, whether there is or not, you say we, you have just multiplied that judgment.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that it really works in the opposite way. Like if you were to say we, I'm not going to think like, oh, I am not being judged by so many more people. But I feel like if I did feel like I was judged, the we would like exacerbate it.
You're also aware that I don't speak for all people. Like I'm not, I'm not a member of the Borg. I do not sync with one. I'm not part of the collective, which means that I could say we like if like and again, forgive me, geeks among us, you'll understand. But like 7 of 9 was one of the Borgs in one of the Star Trek TV series. And it's like, if 7 of 9 were to say, we don't judge you, that individual entity is speaking for the collective because they're all connected and they all believe and think the same thing. But if I say, we don't judge you, you know, I don't know what everybody else is thinking. And you know that I don't speak on behalf of everybody else. So it's like, well, it becomes even less impactful and helpful as a result of it. Now, interestingly enough, this is not where we were going with this episode to begin with. I'm going to segue on to what we were actually wanting. The real kind of focal point of this is that one of the biggest and most problematic things I've seen done with this trend is people are utilizing it as a way of shielding them from the consequences of their actions and choices. So what's happening in a lot of these videos, and I'm guessing, I mean, there's probably a lot more of these videos that maybe don't fall under this category, but these are the ones that go viral. And I'm telling you why they go viral is not because everything's all sweetness and light and everyone's happy at the end of it. Generally speaking, not the things that viral more so than others. And what's happening in these videos is that what tends to happen is that one person is saying, we listen and we don't judge. And then they share something that they have done that the other person wasn't aware of that negatively impacts this person's needs. And then what ends up happening is that but rather than So say, for example, I've seen an example where one of the people was like, we listen and we don't judge. Oh, by the way, when you were with so-and-so, he and I slept together, like behind your back. And then like you see the person's like they react as you would in that situation, which is like, wait, what? And then the other person's like, we listen and we don't judge, like as in like, remember, this is what we're doing. You're supposed to say we listen and we don't judge. Now, first things first is that all of this, like, let's just look at the first example of this is where it's gone one direction, because it gets worse. This is the rabbit hole I am intending to go down in this episode. So what happens is this person is feeling guilty because they've done something that has negatively impacted the other person, will negatively impact the other person. It negatively impacts their needs. Put needs lens on this. This person has harmed and negatively impacted this person's needs. Now, what's happening in this situation is that they feel bad about it. They want the other person to know about it, but they don't want to face the consequences of their actions and choices. So they're trying to use this trend as a shield, which is going to prevent the other person from having a valid reaction to it, from challenging them on why they did what they did, or saying for a second, hold on a second, that's not okay, that you've crossed a boundary, you've done something that is unacceptable to me. This needs to be addressed. Otherwise, this is probably not a friendship that's going to play out well, or that I want to stay a part of. So what they're doing is that they're trying to shield and protect their own needs from being negatively impacted by the consequences of their own choices and their own actions and their own behaviors, because you can do things that will then cause your needs to be negatively impacted because you are doing something where you're acting out of integrity with the person that you want to be, or you've done something that has harmed somebody else's needs. And because of the connection in our humanity, the link in our value need, it actually diminishes our value need, or it negatively impacts our value need because we've negatively impacted somebody else's, and those two are inextricably linked together. So on the surface, and then what ends up happening is this person, the person who has had the harm done to them, if you're watching on the video, like this person and this person, it makes a lot more sense if you can see the video and you can see where I've got my hands. I'm going to try my best to articulate this in a way where if you're listening on the audio, that will make sense as well. So the person who has been negatively impacted by the thing then is put in a position where their needs have been negatively impacted by what has happened. And then this person wants them to further compromise their own needs by not being validated in how they are feeling, by not expressing how they are feeling appropriately, by not communicating and not having their emotional response valued and seen as worthy and seen as so there's a lot of and because it's the whole we listen and we don't judge, this is a trend, you got to do it anyway. There's also the perception they don't have a choice, so it actually knocks out their personal power need as well. So there's like, okay, I owned up to something that has hit you and negatively impacted a bunch of your needs, and now I want you to negatively impact a bunch of your needs again by going, we listen and we don't judge, i.e. I'm not going to have what is a perfectly natural, human and reasonable response to the thing that you have just told me, and I'm going to hold you accountable for your actions, and I'm going to have you experience the consequences of your choices. So that's the first layer. Pretty fucked up. But it gets worse, because what tends to then happen is that because we'll call them person A and person B. Person A is the person who spoke first and said, I did this horrible thing to you. And person B went, oh, but I want to respond, but I'm doing this trend. Oh, we listen and we don't judge, so I'm going to negatively impact my needs. And then what ends up happening is because person B has had their needs negatively impacted, double whammy, they now react from their unmet needs. And in the context and the frame that we've got here, they only have two choices. They can either share something or they can say we listen and we don't judge. So what do they choose to do? They choose to share something that has negatively impacted the other person, because they're reacting from their unmet needs, and part of them sees this other person as being responsible. So they want to negatively impact the other person's needs, i.e. person A's needs. And I've seen this tit for tat thing happen, and every single time they get to the end of what's been shared, and it's like, we listen and we don't judge. Like there's this like nodding that's happening. Remember, this is what we're supposed to do, right? And it's like this, it's like you're trying to think of I had a visual in my head. It's not one I necessarily want to share because it's not a particularly pleasant one, but it's like if you had if you're throwing a ball from one person to the other and it's covered in ink, and it's like you throw it to the other person and they catch it and they get covered in ink. And it's like, oh no. And they throw it back because they want you to get covered in ink. And it's like, oh God, no. And it's like this constant, like it's like one person's needs get a negative impact. So they impact the other person's needs. So they impact the other person's needs. And it just descends and spirals down from that point.
The ball analogy with the ink kind of like, it reminds me of almost like little kids in dodgeball. Like the first couple, and this is not always, but like the first couple of throws, it's kind of like a little toss, a lob. But
and if you're not from the US, dodgeball is a game where you're on two teams and you have these kind of basketball size balls that are pretty hard, and the object of the game is to throw them, and if you hit the person from the other team, they get out, and if they catch the ball, then you get out. So it's a ball where it's basically a game where you're weaponizing balls at other people to try and win a game. Sorry,
you're
just in case you didn't know.
You're assaulting each other and calling it gym class.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And it usually I
didn't want to interrupt, but I'm like, not everyone might know what dodgeball is.
It starts out usually fairly like a friendly game, and people are, like a regular, like throwing the ball speed. Then you get hit with the ball. And these balls, it's almost like they're engineered to like sting.
Smart.
They're like this last.
Yeah.
Anybody who has played dodgeball, especially in like a school setting, knows the sound of the dodgeball smacking against it. Like it is like you hear that sense somebody just got hit with a dodgeball. Right, anyway. Yeah. It starts out, and this can be like, I mean, dodgeball, like even just like little like pushy shovey matches thing. But it's like with the ball, you get hit, and then all of a sudden it hurts, and then you're like, I'm gonna get you, fucker, and you throw the ball a little harder, and that ball hurts them, and they're like, game on. Ow. And then you start like by the end of dodgeball, it is just whipping balls carnage. Back and forth at people, and that's and it's the same kind of thing. It's like. I see you, I hear what you said, and now I'm going to top it with something even more fucked up because I'm feeling a way about that. Like, it becomes like a competition, well, a non-judgmental competition. Like,
well, and the thing about it is that what ends up happening is that everybody in this scenario knows that this person is judged, and the thing about it is, like, I don't think judgment is the right word in this context, because as I said, I don't actually think that I think judgment can be problematic because so often there's a superiority laced into it, as opposed to discernment of like, well, that wouldn't be what I would choose to do, but if that makes you happy, cool. So I think that this person, like in this situation where somebody's harmed somebody else, person A knows that the person B is not okay with this. And it's written like everything, like their physiology responds, like their posture, their breathing, the tone of their voice, everything about their response is like screaming, I'm not okay with this. So where this person has maybe done it to try to feel better about themselves and kind of push this, force this person to be like, okay, you can't judge me. Remember, we're doing the trend. They know that it's not okay. This other person also knows, hold on, this person who I supposedly like and trusted, has now put me in a situation where I'm not allowed to actually ask questions or find out what's happened or express how I'm feeling about this, which is valid, in order to make themselves not have to deal with it's all like there's so much about this, which is like so much of society, which is so much is swept under the carpet and not said, and the exponential damage that is done to individuals and relationships through doing that is just mind-blowing. Because every single time, like, it's like, okay, I know that this person is not okay with this. This person is not okay with it and knows the other person knows that they're not okay with it. But they're trying to force this person to say, no, we don't judge. Everything's fine. Like, they're basically trying to say, I'm putting you in a situation where you have to pretend like everything is fine because it's going to make me feel better, even though it actually won't make you feel better. Irrespective of the fact that I've done something that I should have no right to feel better about. And going back to what Serena was saying earlier, it cuts out all of the essential conversations in a situation like that that could actually lead to a continuation of the relationship, or sometimes even a enhancement of the relationship. Like if it's handled, depending on what the thing is, obviously, if things aren't, mistakes are made or things are done, depending on how it's handled, like we talked about this in the friendship series, like how issues are opportunities to get closer in relationship. If you haven't listened to that episode, we'll put a link to it in the show notes. In those conversations are where the trust is built. They're where the understanding is built. It's where the connection and the bond is built. If you avoid those conversations, and this is basically just one big avoidance strategy, it's like, I want to pretend that my needs aren't unmet, or I don't want to feel like my needs are unmet, so I'm going to say it in a way where I don't have to deal with the fact that your needs have been unmet by the thing that I've done, and then you don't get to negatively impact my needs in your reaction, so my needs don't, like, it's this, like, there's this fallacy of trying to save face of our needs. And obviously this is not a conscious thing. Someone doesn't go in to go, we listen and we don't judge, going, right, I know I've negatively impacted this person's needs, but if I put them in a situation, they're going to react in such a way that means that my needs won't be negatively impacted. Like, this is all happening subconsciously. Like, it's not a conscious awareness that they have of this. But I think that if you have these conversations, that avoidance avoids the very thing that actually is what any good relationship is built on, which is communication, it is understanding, it is curiosity, it is compassion, it is empathy. Because when you put somebody in that situation of going, oh, I did this thing, we listen, we don't judge, remember, like, there's a complete lack of empathy for the impact that you've had to the other person, and that person's going to feel that lack of empathy. Go on, I feel like you want to jump in.
You can finish what you're saying. I can.
Yeah, and I think that if you're in this position where you've done something and it might have been a mistake, it might have been a bad decision that you've made at some point, and if you go to that person, I think a lot of people are afraid that if they own their mistakes and they go to that person and go, hey, I did this thing, that person could be like, well, fuck you, we're done, bye. And that's a possibility. And chances are that's going to be the outcome if you approach them with complete lack of empathy, with complete lack of communication, and with a total avoidance of any accountability for what you've done. If you come to that person and say, look, I did this thing, I feel terrible about it, and go through the steps of effective apology. And if you don't know what those are, we'll link to the episode in the show notes, where you go through and you acknowledge what's happened, you address it, you make amends for it, you avoid repeating, you go above and beyond, you do all of these things. Those are the things that can heal when you have negatively impacted somebody else's needs. Without any of those things, there is no healing. That fracture that began at the very moment you made that decision becomes wider and is only going to get wider over time. And eventually there will be something. It might not be this moment. This might not be the moment they go, what the fuck are you doing a TikTok trend to tell me this stuff? This is so screwed up. But sooner or later there will probably be something where they're going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm done, this is not okay, this way of doing relationship is not all right with me. Now,
I'm obviously not up on the trends that are happening, or
what? Little TikTok queen over there.
I'm laughing because it is so far from the
I think she's more a tic-tac queen than a TikTok queen, but
very much so. I can only imagine it's not always people who are divulging a deep, dark secret to somebody that it's going to impact them, but it could be that they're divulging something that has impacted somebody somebody in a negative way, and like, totally obscure reference, I'm going like total like other side. It's
land.
Like, yeah, if Claire and I were doing this and I was like, yeah, so yeah, I killed somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else. Like, there would be like, if not judgment, there would be some serious fucking questions. And it's like, it sounds like people could be using this to just kind of clear their conscience, not be held, like, we're not talking about judgment here. We're talking about being held accountable for the fact that you've negatively impacted somebody. Like,
and facing
that's the thing that's
consequences for your choices.
Yeah. Like, you can't feel good. You can't just say this on a viral video and then be like
done with it.
Yeah, like, oh, all right, well, that's gone. Like,
yeah, well, and I mean, obviously Serena just gave a very, very extreme example there. And if there is something which is going to have significantly impacted somebody else's needs, whether that is yourself or somebody else, and you just drop a sentence about, hey, I did this, without any context, because it could be that I don't know. I was looking after somebody else's pet and I had a really bad accident. I was sent to the emergency room and I was kept in the hospital for 3 weeks and nobody knew. And so the pet didn't get the food they needed and they died. Like, there's a context in that is, like, that's beyond somebody's control. Like, that's not something they could have done anything about. Without the context, you have no idea how to discern, rather than judge, rather than going, no, this is the right way and this is the wrong way, discern whether what somebody's sharing with you is okay or not okay. So, for example, Serena's example of, like, I killed somebody, that could be the end of the sentence. Well, what if they were in a country where euthanasia was legal, and this person had a chronic illness, was in a lot of pain, and they were a part of that process because that's what the person wanted and chose. Like, there's a lot of context around that. There's a very big difference between that and I saw a video this morning about I don't even remember what it was, because if it was, I probably would have told you, because Serena's a true crime person. There was somebody who'd done a documentary on a person who had killed like 3 people, and he was so arrogant, he believes that he would still get away with it, even though he cooperated with the person doing the documentary about it that was going to indicate that he had done these things. And so it's that whole thing of like, well, yeah, I mean, I did this. And again, context of the situation. Now, we're not saying like harming others, like not saying that we condone that, because if you're harming somebody else, chances are you're negatively impacting their needs, not a self-first way of doing things. Unless you're in a situation where that's the only way you can get out of the situation where you're being harmed. I mean, there's a hot, like, nuance all over this, all over the place when it comes to this. And the point that Serena makes stands is that if there is no context, and there is a choices being made to avoid consequences, there is no opportunity for healing, either for the person who has been harmed or for the person who has done the harm. Because this is the thing, is that what we don't realize is that when we have negatively impacted somebody else, we've talked about how if you negatively impact somebody else's needs to get your needs met, because there's a link of our humanity, it's going to negatively impact our value need, because it's negatively impacting their value need, because we've disconnected from our humanity, blah, 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 blah. Yes. And that's not the only way it negatively impacts us, because when we feel guilt because of negativity impact, it's going to impact our emotion, experience, and expression need. It possibly is going to impact our security need, because we're going to feel, well, what happens if when they find out what I've done, are they still going to want to be around me anymore? Is our friendship going to withstand this? Or it's going to impact our love and connection need, because we're going to feel more distant from this person because we know the truth of what's happened that they don't know about. It's going to negatively impact our needs. And the truth of the matter is, depending on what's happened, depending on the individual, depending on the circumstances, and all the nuance that goes along with that, there are situations in which somebody's going to do something and the other person's going to go, you know what, that's a bridge too far for me. This is no longer a relationship that I want to engage in. And there are going to be times when like Serena and I have screwed up with each other. I don't even know how many times that we've crossed lines, crossed boundaries, not intentionally, but we have hurt the other person and we've negatively impacted their needs. And by having these conversations, by owning responsibility for what we have done, by taking responsibility for addressing it and making it right, by showing how important the other person is to us. And again, contextually, we've never gone so far. Like we've never hit that level of like, oh, I'm sorry, I love you dearly, but
it's a deal
this
breaker.
is too far. Yeah, deal breaker for me. But still, like we've had these moments, and it's through the dialogue, it's through the conversation, it's through the resolving of what has happened, by addressing the needs that have been impacted, by showing that we want to act to ensure we don't do that again in the future, and all those things. That's what creates the bond. That's what creates the level of relationship that we have.
And I think sharing that emotion behind pretty much I mean, the eggs reference, yeah, that one's a little obscure, and I'm not going to have too many feelings on how somebody eats their eggs. Like, there's too much going on in my life to really like focus in on Benedict versus poached, or like, I guess Benedict is poached eggs, but that's another episode. And of
all
course,
I've got in my head now is the runaway bride thing, where she doesn't know how she likes her eggs, and she's got all the different eggs in front of her. Anyway,
yes, that's how I found out. Like after that movie, I found out Benedict is my egg of choice.
There you go.
There you go. Now you all know a fun fact about me. Let's see if I can get back on the train of thought, though, because I feel like it had somewhere that it was going. Oh, sharing the emotions. So, like I was saying before, like these situations, like cutting it off with a simple callback phrase is not allowing the connection you need. It's not allowing for any sort of sharing. And the sharing of how you're feeling about something, even if it's something like, let's go somewhere kind of middle of the road. I have a friend and they're like, oh, I cheated on my girlfriend. Okay, like I'm not going to go and like, if somebody says that to me, I've come to a place in my life where I know that there's usually a lot of nuance and things. And I'm starting to think of the different scenarios that it could be.
Yeah.
So judgment isn't my first stop anymore. It used to be. Like it was the first stop on the train. It was the second stop, the third, fourth. There may have been one stop where I was a little too tired to judge, but then I definitely got off in judgment too.
Fair.
And now it's like, I mean, it has to be something huge for me to automatically go with no context being like, this is my opinion, I'm judging you. Yeah. But something like, okay, so you cheated on this person. Like, how do you feel about that? Or, you know, like that kind of triggers me from past things that doesn't have anything to do with this. But like, I do have feels about like how that affects the other person. And to say that there's no judgment there almost says, I have no feelings. I have no opinion about this. I have no thoughts about this. And I don't think like, there's not much like even about your egg. If you were to tell me about the eggs, it's like, I want to know these things. And I have feelings that now it's like, okay, now I know how she enjoys her. Like, I want to have conversations about all the things. So shutting it down with a phrase is just.
Well, and the interesting thing is, I actually don't think it is, I don't think it's saying that there's no judgment. It's just, it's basically a masking phrase. It's a phrase. You could be saying anything at this point, but it is a phrase that is designed to muzzle the person receiving the information and prevent them from sharing. And so, and Serena's right. Like, it doesn't matter. It prevents all of the things. It's the thing that, like, it reminds me of a thought terminating cliche, which is like a phrase that is used to shut down critical thinking and have somebody just accept what is going on, irrespective if it's not okay. And go on.
It's like masked witnessing. Like, it's almost like they're trying to like witness somebody, but they're completely missing the entire point of it. Like,
well, I think it's not that, because I think that it's about silencing somebody, because they're going to see it all. I don't think that they are not seeing it. I think it's about silencing the response and having them not have a response, having them not be able to ask questions, having them not be able to express how they're feeling, having them not be able to communicate anything around it. So like the example you gave of like, oh, you found out that, if you say you found out a friend was cheating on their partner, I would be the first one to say that's not okay. And it might not be me, but if I were that person in the situation, this is how I would feel. And yeah, you may have, like, I'm curious as to how did you get here? Why did this happen? And I still believe that you could have handled a situation in such a way where it would have minimized the impact. If you realize that this wasn't working with this person, you could have ended it first. So there's a whole conversation that communicates what my values are, what my beliefs are, the kind of people that I want to be around. And it's tough when you put your like flag in the sand and go, this is who I am and this is how I feel and this is what's okay with me and not okay with me. Because some people are going to go, oh, cool, not for me, see ya. And that's okay, but you want the people in your life who are going to be okay with that and who are going to be like, I've been instrumental in other people changing their perspectives on pretty big topics in life, like systemic issues, and me sharing how I feel about them and going, actually, this is not okay with me, has had some people gone, meh, that doesn't make me feel comfortable, I'm going to run away. Other people have attacked me and told me I'm attacking them and they've made out that they're the victim in the situation. And other people have gone, yeah, I could see that. I hadn't thought about that before. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. One of them is literally on the podcast with me right now. And that was a pivotal moment in our friendship where I'm like, hey, this is how I feel about this. And it was one of those hold your breath moments. How's this person going to respond? Because some people don't lean in. And Serena was like, oh. And I'm like, okay, cool.
And had I just kind of gone with that phrase, like, I wouldn't, like, there needed to be a conversation so that I wasn't, because especially when my privilege was put right in front of my face, I was like, oh, no, that's not me. That's not me. And then it's like, all of a sudden I'm like,
like, how about you peek around the side of that?
Society and all, yeah, okay. And then you had to start, like, there needed to be a conversation, because I thought at that point, Claire was one of the first person to ever put a mirror up to me. And it would have been really easy for me to be like, just judging her opinion on and be like, no, you're wrong with this. And it's like,
and many people
a wider discussion is so necessary. And this keeps coming through, and I'm reticent to say it. However, like, this phrase sounds a little fucking culty. Like,
yes, it does. Yeah. Because it's the sort of thing that, and thought terminating cliches are one of these things that get utilized in cult-like groups, in order to shut down thinking and have people conform to the way of thinking that they want them to. And I totally agree with you. And I think it is very much, and that's why it's so dangerous, because anything that causes us to shut down our critical thinking, like, yeah, on the surface, it might be like, yeah, we listen and we don't judge. Isn't that nice? Because yeah, Serena and I don't judge each other, but I'm going to have some discernment over, okay, that thing that you did, I'm not okay with it because of this, and this. And then Serena gets to decide, okay, is my comfort more important, or is actually the fact that she's got a point? Those are valid pieces of information. Okay, yeah, I'm going to lean into the information. And while this is uncomfortable, I'm going to have a conversation about this. And we've had so many conversations over the years that have led us to where we are right now. If you shut down all of that, and you prevent critical thinking, and you prevent critical querying, as in like asking questions and communicating, it is very culty in nature, because that's exactly what those groups do. Is they serve to they don't want you to think for yourself. They want you to think what they think you should think, and all the things that, if you think a certain way, will benefit the group, not or the leader of the group, or both, rather than yourself. And as I said, on the surface, it might seem like a nice idea, but in actual fact, this is really problematic in so many ways and so many layers, because the places where you create trust, the places where you create connection, the places where you create a bond, happen in a place of openness. Like we've talked about this before, honesty, openness, and forthcomingness, like the 3 levels of honesty, where it's like the conversations aren't necessarily comfortable, but if you're prioritizing your comforts over authenticity, over honesty, over actual connection. Because if you're not being transparent with somebody and you haven't told them how you feel, there's always that thing in the back of your mind where it's like, if they knew how I really felt, would they really want to be friends with me? So it undermines the relationship even without the conversation happening.
Mm-hmm.
So you might as well have the conversation and find out if is it possible to heal this. Because there have been like moments in my life with I've had moments in my life with other friends where we've had a difference of opinion over something, and some friends have been like, deuces, I'm out, and off they've gone. And other people have gone, this relationship is too important to me to just dip. Now, like, let's see if we can figure this out. And sometimes you can't figure it out, and that's okay. But if you don't try, you'll never know what's possible in terms of friendship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'll never know what you really have.
No.
Like, there's been a lot of friendships in my life where, come to find out, it's like, oh, you were pretty much judging me all along for stuff that is none of your business to judge me on. And it's like, oh, I could have saved a lot of time and energy in my life. You could have saved a lot of time and energy in your life if we had just had a discussion and like
come back full circle to needs. The reason that we don't do that is because so many of us are dependent on other people to get our needs met because we don't know how to meet them ourselves. Mm-hmm. It becomes easier to allow somebody to judge us, to think ill of what we do or the choices that we make. If our needs are met and we don't need them to like us, to love us, to want to be in relationship with us in order for our needs to be met. I mean, they're not met particularly well in those situations anyway. So trust me, it's better for everybody if you just learn to meet your own needs, because they're going to be far better met than if you are dependent on other people anyway. And if you are no longer dependent on others to meet your needs, it opens up the ability for you to have these conversations. Because if I'm having a conversation with Serena about something that I've screwed up on, I'm not worried that if Serena decides to go, oh, that's it, bye, that my needs are no longer going to be met because I know how to meet them myself. And because of that, we're able to be more transparent. And because we're able to be more transparent, we're able to be more transparent about more things. I cannot tell you the level of ridiculousness in some of the things that we share with each other proactively. The tiniest, insignificant, irrelevant things. But because they are present, they potentially could cause some challenge in our relationship. And what we do is we clear them. It's like, hey, I just want to voice this. And there have been numerous times recently where one of us is like, I know this isn't a thing. I know the full story. But actually, like, it happened a couple of weeks ago. There was something that I hadn't done, which Serena had sort of asked me to do in passing. Like, it was like a conversation we'd had, but we hadn't had the, can you do this for me? Yes, I will do it conversation. And I hadn't done it because my ADHD brain, it went in one ear and out the other, and I hadn't made a note of it, and I didn't realize it was something we were agreeing to do. And Serena even came to me. She was like, look, I know why this happened. I know that this is nothing, like, it's not an issue because I understand why. And still, and she's giving me all this caveat, and I'm like, you still want to name it? Like, why don't we just get this out? Like let's just name it, because then it's out, and it's like we don't have to worry about the fact that I haven't said it, or it's like sitting inside me festering because I haven't spoken it. And I was like, oh my goodness, of course, yeah, I'm so sorry. Like, it was dealt with in the blink of an eye, but without voicing it, those things, they end up compounding.
And they compound with other things. And that was part of what I had said to her. I was like, I get why this happened. I get all the things surrounding it. I was like, and this, and this is happening right now in conjunction with it. And it's these three situations that are really fucking me about. And yours is like a niggle that I don't like. It doesn't even need to be a thing. So like, there are feels attached to this, and the feels are valid, but I realize the situation isn't what the feels are about. Like, if that makes sense. Because I feel like that just got really confusing. But
yeah, it's basically what Serena is saying is that I have feelings about the thing that's going on with you only really because of the feelings I have about all these other things that are going on. And if the other things weren't going on, it probably wouldn't even register on my radar. And it doesn't matter, like whether contextually there would be a situation where Serena wouldn't be having feels about it. She's having feels about it. Let's name it. Cool. That's something I can do something about. Let me take the little niggle out of your way. And if you don't know what we're talking about, go back and listen to the Clearing Niggles episode, which is part of the friendship series. We'll put the link in the show notes. Let's get that out. So you've got one less thing to worry about, because it was literally dealt with. And the funny thing is, I still haven't done the thing that we talked about, but Serena knows I have an unread email in my inbox that every time I look at my inbox, I'm like, okay, is it the time to do this yet? No, because actually there's a bigger thing I have to do with the same project. And I'm just going to do it all at the same time, because it makes sense to do it at the same time when I'm in that program and I'm doing all of the things associated with it. And I'm assuming it's no longer bothering you because you know I've got it, and you know that the fact that I've said I've got it and I've set myself up to remember it means you know it's going to be handled at some point without worrying about it anymore.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And like, it's a non-thing for me now. Like something that was just a little thing, and that could have been like, if the other things hadn't gotten resolved, that would be just like that little niggle would turn into something bigger when it never needed to be a thing to begin with. So
so suffice to say is that, in all honesty, the phrase and the trend, we listen and we don't judge, really just feels like a way of avoiding actual accountability and avoiding addressing the issues that are really going on, and trying to force something to be true that actually isn't. The thing that's really going to create connection in your relationships is if you actually listen and you actually don't judge and you actually become curious and you actually communicate and you actually apologize and you actually address the things that are going on. You actually empathize. Those are the things, like, we can't. And I know that some people might listen to this going, it's just a trend. Like, it's not that serious. And you're probably right. And some of these, I'm sure, have been set up or scripted. And then some of them I don't think have been set up and scripted from what I have seen. And I just want to encourage people, like, when they are thinking about these things, if they are things that you're doing it to avoid the discomfort in your relationships, then the chances are it's not going to serve your needs or anybody else's needs by going down that particular rabbit hole.
Like, lacking judgment requires understanding, and understanding requires conversation and communication. So just by nature, like,
I'm not sure if it's true that lacking in judgment requires understanding, because sometimes, like, I don't judge you for the things that you're doing. I might not understand why you're doing it. Sometimes I do. Like, and obviously it depends. Nuance. Like, it depends on, like, the things. Like, some things I'm like, I'm just curious, why are you doing it that way? Like, just so I understand. But I don't think I would judge you if I didn't have that information. I think that the whole point of this is that what we want to really have is connection. What we really want is trust. And what we really want is to create community with the people closest to us. And the only way to effectively do that is to have transparent, open communication with empathy, validating other people's experiences. And when we inevitably do negatively impact somebody else, because it's not if, it's when, we teach this stuff and we still do it, because that's human nature. We're human beings, and we make mistakes and we sometimes make bad choices. That's just inevitable. And when those things happen, we need to actually address it at its core. And part of that is hearing how somebody else feels, having them feel heard, having them feel validated, having them feel that we understand what we've done and why it has negatively impacted them. And therefore, this is why we won't do it again. And I think that's the piece that's missing in all of this is the this, like, my brain is going in a million different directions about judgment and discernment and things. And I'm not going to go there right now, but I just feel like that at the end of the day, what is the point? The point is to create good connection, to create good community. And you can't do that by avoiding the conversations. And this is just one more way of avoiding the conversations and avoiding the truth. And the only way that you actually create genuine connection is by facing the truth and knowing somebody is choosing you, knowing everything that there is to know. That's what creates connection. That's what creates belonging. That's what creates acceptance. And if you don't trust that what they're saying is true or honest, then you're always going to have a nagging doubt in the back of your mind. Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to add?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next week with another episode. But between now and then, remember to stay safe, take care of yourself, and continue to meet your own needs. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and give us a written review, as it will help more people find us.
And remember, rather than we listen and we don't judge, maybe we should try we communicate and we don't avoid.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.